Talks, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kristy Alexander. Thanks, Janelle. Thanks for letting us know you can hear us. And I am the founder and chief big heart of Apple Rose Beauty. And this is Mia.
Hi, everybody.
And Mia is our area manager in Jacksonville, Florida, which is where we're based. And I happen to be here in Florida this week, so we're doing Heart Talks together. Thanks, Samantha. Thank you for letting us know you can hear us. So, these are going to be 15-minute segments. This is our second episode of Heart Talks, so we're so excited to have you guys here with us. We're going to have conversations around human trafficking, which is a big part of our mission with Apple Rose Beauty. We're going to also talk about all things beauty and skincare. We're going to have some giveaways. So I encourage you guys to stay with us till the end. So thank you guys for joining us. Today, we're going to continue our conversation from last week about human trafficking. You probably know that this is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. So January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And last week we debunked some myths around human trafficking. So we debunked some myths about whether human trafficking always involves kidnapping. Hi, Core Image LLC. Thank you for joining us on Instagram. So one of the myths we debunked was whether human trafficking always involves force or kidnapping or abduction, and we learned that that's not always the case. The other myth that we debunked was whether human trafficking always takes place internationally with like someone coming from overseas. And we debunked that myth as well, that a lot of times it happens right here on US soil to US citizens. So I want to just continue with that a little bit. I'm going to debunk another myth. And then we're also going to talk about some signs that you guys can look out for to identify whether human trafficking is taking place. So we'll do that. Then we'll go into our product minute, just like we did last week. We're going to feature some products. We're going to share some cool promotions with you guys and do the giveaways. So this is going to be fun and interactive. If you guys have any questions as we're going through this, please feel free to comment. We would love this to be really interactive. You guys teaching us as we teach you as well. Also, if you have any stories or videos around human trafficking that you would like to share, anything you heard recently, anything you're not sure about, comment about that as well so we can touch base on that. And we would just love to hear what you guys have been hearing, what you've been thinking around this. We know that there's been a lot of conversation recently just about what's been going on in a lot of our communities with girls going missing and women going missing and all of that. So I would love to hear what you guys have been seeing and hearing and any questions that you guys have. Hey, Adrian, thanks for joining us.
And Philomena Skincare.
And hey, Marquita, you're both on Instagram and Facebook. Okay.
Hey, Shadow Kitty.
Hey, Shadow Kitty. Yes, everyone. Thank you guys all for joining us. So, Mia, what's the first question?
So the first question is human trafficking easy to spot?
Oh, yes, and you're coming in from Canada. Hey, Anna. Yes. We love having you here. Thank you for tuning in from Canada. So the question was, is human trafficking easy to spot? So, last week we talked about human trafficking. The definition of human trafficking is the exploitation of one human being by another for profit through force, fraud, or coercion. And last week we talked in a little bit more detail on what force is. We all know what force is. When you see somebody being snatched or grabbed or whatever that is. And we talked about fraud. And I told you guys the story of the young lady who thought she was going to a modeling gig and how things kind of turned out. But the third way, which is actually one of the more popular ways it happens. Hi, LaShanta.
Hey.
Thank you for joining us. One of the more popular ways that human trafficking takes place is through coercion. And coercion is actually a really calculated process that the trafficker does to groom his victim into trusting him, into developing feelings for him very often, before he actually steers that person into human trafficking. So it's actually a very calculated process. There have actually been reports where traffickers said that some of the things they look out for when they approach a young woman is whether she's confident or not. So, for example, they may walk through the mall and they may say to a young woman that they see, "Hey, you're really pretty." And if she says, "Oh, thank you," and moves on, then they see her as not a very good option because she's confident and she carries herself with confidence. She knows she's beautiful, and so she's not searching for that affirmation. Hi, Petra. Thanks for joining us. But if she says, "Oh no, I'm not that pretty," or she blushes a little bit and seems a little insecure, then they see that as someone that they can actually take advantage of. So they actually look for these signs before they begin the grooming process. And so the coercion process usually takes place over a period of time. It doesn't happen right away. They develop that relationship and that trust. So often they start by giving them gifts, showering them with gifts, making them trust them, making them feel like they're loved, making them feel like they're affirmed. And then they use that trust to victimize them. So this happens really, really often. So the question about whether human trafficking is easy to spot, when it takes place through coercion, it's a little bit more difficult to spot because it takes place over a longer period of time, and it also looks like love or looks like a relationship.
Right.
It happens a lot of times often with high school girls. You may see that they have an older boyfriend, much older, and they start coming to school with a lot of expensive gifts. They start distancing themselves from their friends. And so these are all signs of human trafficking. And we're going to talk a little bit more about those signs today. So to answer that question, when it's forced, of course, you can tell that somebody's being forced into something. When it's fraud, it might take a little longer, but you can definitely tell that something has been fraudulent. But when it's coercion, it's a little bit harder to spot.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go through it. If you guys, like I said, if you have questions, please post it. We're also going to do the giveaway. So for those of you that are just joining us, the way that you enter the giveaway is to like this video, comment on it. So those of you that are just joining us, please comment. Let us know that you're on. Comment on this video and then share it on your page in the public mode. So I'm just going to talk to you guys a little bit about some of the signs. And Mia, you can keep me on track with time. Mm-hmm. But some of the signs, I mentioned a couple of them before. So if it's someone that you know, someone that you're familiar with, you may see a drastic change in their personality. They may start being a little bit more reserved. They may start distancing themselves. They may start being a little more secretive. Of course, when you're dealing with teenagers, some of them do that anyway. So see through what is actually happening. So sometimes they're showing up at home with expensive gifts and you're not quite sure where they're getting it from. That's definitely an opportunity to ask some questions about what's happening in their life and who they're involved with. I also talked about isolation. Hey! I also talked about isolation. So one of the things that traffickers like to do is to isolate their victims because they want to be kind of the only voice or the loudest voice in their lives so they can influence them heavily. So they try to distance them from or isolate them from friends that they're used to hanging out with. Hi, Brianna. Thanks for joining us. They try to distance them from friends, from activities that they usually enjoy. So these are different things to look out for from people that you know. If you see changes like this happening in their lives, that you can probably these are some of the signs that human trafficking is taking place. One of the other things, which is one that they actually train a lot of people who interact with victims often, like flight attendants or hospital staff, like nurses, is that the person, the victim, the human trafficking victim, is often in the company of someone else who they defer to a lot. So when they ask, thank you, Lashanta for summarizing that, and Linda, nice to be with us. Yeah, so often, like you said, Kim, often the victim doesn't realize that they're being groomed by the trafficker.
Yeah, they're flattered.
They're flattered. You know, they're filling that void of needing affirmation. So like I said, one of the other things to look for is that they're usually in the company of someone else, maybe a much older man that they defer to when asked questions. So one example is there was a story that broke. I don't know if you guys saw it. I think it was last year, with this flight attendant who was able to identify a trafficking victim because as she was doing the services for the plane, she would ask the girl, you know, different questions. What would you like to eat? What would you like to have? What snack would you like? And the girl would always defer to the gentleman that was with.
But answer her questions for her.
Yes, so she would seem a little timid and she would look at him. So these were simple, you know, questions that any kid, you know, if snacks are being passed, the child knows what they want. But she was deferring very often to this older gentleman. And so the flight attendant that was assigned to her, because she had gone through trafficking awareness training, and so that was assigned to her that something might not be right. So that's one of the signs to look for if it's someone, especially if it's someone that you're not as familiar with, like you don't know, so you won't be able to tell if there's a change in their behavior, but you're just out in public and you see these interactions. That may be a sign of human trafficking. And then the last one I want to talk about, which is one that nurses are trained on, because actually trafficking victims go to hospitals really often.
Yeah.
Because they're abused, you know, they're beaten sometimes, and so they go into hospitals and sometimes the nurses interact with them. But one of the signs nurses have been trained to look for too is whether there are signs of poor hygiene or physical abuse, and also that same thing about them deferring to someone else. So usually the trafficker won't leave them in the room by themselves. You know, they come in with them, and so there's that kind of interaction as well.
And they don't have a primary care physician that they would go to originally, because you know that it would be easier to trace or detect the symptoms that they're having physically from the harm that they're enduring.
Right, exactly. So they hop around a lot for medical care. So these are some things to look out for.
And Shadowberry said, I like the way that she said that passive aggressive emotional manipulation.
Yes.
It's not direct, it's very passive, and that makes it easier to detect. And one of the things we talked about before we started was a lot of this is happening in our neighborhoods.
Yes.
In our neighborhoods with our children, with our teenagers that we see every day at school. I'm a teacher, and you know, I hear stories and I know of stories of human trafficking right here in our neighborhoods.
Right.
Not just overseas, not just, you know, along some border or something. And they I know there was a study that came out where Jacksonville was very high trafficking volume here, right here in Jacksonville.
Yeah, and I mean, I live in Atlanta now, and you know, it's also a hot spot for human trafficking. So it's happening all over the U.S. For those of you that are just joining us, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining Heart Talks. We are going to be doing giveaways at the end of this session. So I encourage you to comment. The way you enter the giveaways, to like, comment, and share this video